Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you on. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Sunny California.
I know, right? I could kind of tell I'm here in the southeast of Ireland, in a place that they call the sunny southeast, and we had 2 weeks of sun, and then it's rained for the last like 10 days straight. So, yeah,
Well, it's against the law to rain a lot here.
that's like I don't know whether some people tell me that you would get bored of it if you lived in LA or near LA or the surrounding areas because it's always sunny, and I'm like, would I get bored of that though?
Well, yeah, you would. Don't come. No, it is pretty nice. It's and the ocean's there and the mountains are here. And
I
it's
do
pretty
like
good.
the sound of that, to be honest. If we can go back to the start for a minute,
Yeah.
do you remember the first time you were ever scared by a piece of media, whether it be a film, TV show, book, whatever it might be, comic, anything?
First thing that really scared me were my dreams as a child.
Interesting.
But probably the first movie, and I saw it on TV. And it was clips from the original Dracula, the German one.
When
That was so creepy.
mm, when you say your dreams, was there any? Because I think I've only had that answer once before, and somebody said that they had a reoccurring dream where like there was several things that would constantly kind of pop up. Was that the way for you, or was it
Oh
just
yeah,
having?
yeah. I have this dream that my parents would come in my room and they were smiley and all that, but they weren't my real parents. And they were coming in there to take me, and then they were going to eat me, cook me, and eat me. And I don't know what triggered it, but I know it always happened on a Tuesday, and the dreams would go. They'd all of a sudden lose their color, and they'd be brown and beige. And I knew in my dream I was having this dream because it was Tuesday, and I'd eaten ground beef. I mean, go figure. And then there would be the smiley parents who were actually, it's kind of like Hansel and Gretel, and
Yeah.
they're out there to do me in.
Um. So from that point, then, would you have been a kid or a teen who was into anything scary, or was like, did you have a particular interest in film or a particular genre?
As a kid, not really, but I did like scary things. I mean, my dear grandmother, she knew me pretty well. So for Christmas, when I was a little kid, she gave me a shrunken head because she knew that
Nice.
was the only thing that I was gonna really like. Yeah, I always, they'd go, oh, that's Graham, because I'd be attracted to very dark things.
Did that carry through? Well, obviously, it probably did to a degree. And you got your start a little bit. Well, I don't want to say a little bit differently, but you got your start directing music videos and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So how did that? Like, how does one come to that? Was it a case of the directing and stuff interested you, or was it the music that kind of drew you to that profession?
I'd gone to film school. Um, when I was a little kid, I kind of wanted to be an actor, but I didn't think too much about it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I took photography and I loved that. Went to film school and then couldn't get a job anywhere. So I was a house painter. And an old guy from high school uh, came to stay at my house. I was living in San Francisco and he needed a place to stay in a bad way. And so he came over, and then he invited me over to this warehouse where he had friends. Now, what I didn't know at the time is the reason he was at my house was he was a cocaine dealer, and he owed all these people money. He'd been ripping people off, but he had 2 pounds of coke stored at this warehouse where these artists lived. And so he'd keep going over to that warehouse to get coke. And so he introduced me to him, and those turned out to be the band The Residents. And So I started hanging out with them and working with them, and it's slowly and surely they got to the point where they needed a chap to make them some short films for their music.
Was that just a no-brainer for you then? That
It
you would be
was
that guy?
it was a dream come true, and a passion, and a passion.
And to, you know,
And it
to
was
go
perfect
from
too because me having a dark sense and living in my own nightmare world, and they kind of wanted dark products, so it's like, oh Lord, yeah, it was perfect.
so when you do that, obviously, like it sounds like even all this time later, that was a something that you enjoyed, you were passionate about, you had a desire for. So how does one go from that then, I guess? Is it just a natural evolution or progression to go from that to maybe thinking about, you know, maybe I'd like to do some of this stuff in a longer format, or I'd like to create like, you know, feature length stories?
Well, I always knew I wanted to make movies, but the shorts were fine. I mean, I shot them like little movies. They weren't done on video, and they didn't have a guy with a guitar strumming a guitar. They were all done with sets and actors and a storyline, which basically I did like Chaplin, as I wrote it by filming it. But then later on, some guy offered me a job writing a script, and a spec script, and I'd just been able to get a computer. I dropped out of film. I took an F, dropped out of writing class in film school because it was just too hard to type. Because back then you had to use whiteout, to correct your mistakes, and being a little dyslexic and all, my whole page would be nothing but whiteout. So this guy came along, and it would just happen to hit the first PCs were around, and I figured, you know what? I bet those things can autocorrect. And then, boom, I was writing scripts.
Was that a difficult transition? Like you said, you kind of packed in the writing class in film school, you know, to go from that to then actually writing a script. Was that a difficult process? Was it a case of just trial by fire, or
Well, the
do you think?
hardest thing was getting the computer to work, because I went and I bought it at this discount house, and it was old school, and all there was a little prompt on the screen, and I couldn't figure out how to. I didn't know how to load in Microsoft Word or anything like that. So that was the hardest part. The actual writing wasn't that hard. I mean, it just took. It was very slow, but writing is slow. But I discovered I really liked it. Uh, I really loved writing because anything I could dream of, I could put on paper. There were no limitations as far as budget or anything like that. And then
I
I was
think we
able to
might have lost you there.
draw from this little cesspool of my mind, and put it on paper, and it all worked out. Well.
I think I might have lost you there for a second.
Technical,
Uh,
no sound.
yeah, the audio. It's no, I don't know. It's like it goes really quiet at times, and then your mic comes back perfect. Let me just check something here.
It's not my end. It might be, you got some noise canceling going there.
Let me see. I wonder is it
I've
echoes?
been pretty much the same level all the time, and I get
Uh,
good mic, so
Now it seems to be corrected itself. I don't know. It was kind of like the noise gate or something was like taken away
yeah,
and then adding
yeah,
and then taken
yeah.
away. Let me
That's like
just
Zoom. Zoom does the same thing. It has automatic noise canceling, and
let me just check here to see.
yeah. I'm in a pretty quiet room too. So
There we go. Hopefully that fixes that issue. Um, Something I was actually interested to ask on the, you know, the concept of writing. Um, and I normally I would leave an advice question for probably later on, but I'm kind of fascinated by, you mentioned kind of just dropping the writing class in film school and maybe not being you know not that you're not interested in it, but struggling with like the difficulty of how they wanted you to whatever put a story together and the structure and stuff like that. And
And
it's
that
something
wasn't the
that,
difficulty. Difficulty was the actual typing because it wasn't, it was before computers. It was like a typewriter. So if you hit the
also
wrong
the
button,
actual okay,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
actual typing was the
Okay, yeah,
problem.
yeah, yeah.
Then that's why when computers came along and I could
Yes.
buy one, then I realized, oh my God, I can write now.
Yeah.
I say I liken computers to like some kind of handicap device. You know, for people like me that are handicapped, it made writing possible.
What advice would you give to someone who I feel like there's probably a lot of people who are good storytellers out there, but maybe struggle with, and I've even fallen into this. I've had sometimes before people recommend me different books to read and things, and I got like this big, big, thick, like a screenwriting guide thing, like a workbook, and I just found it made it more.
Horrible,
Oh,
horrible. That
yeah,
that
like
will that will
massive.
you'll never want to write after you read some garbage like that. No, what I say is write the movie you want to see. You can see it here, and just make that movie here and then write it and make it just the what you want to see. And hopefully then what you want is what an audience would want. But make it fun and exciting for you and dare yourself, dare yourself to
Mm.
come up with stuff that's just surprising. And when you go, oh my God, I shouldn't write that, and then write that.
Is it difficult when doing that? Because I don't know if I've just been fed because you hear so many different versions and so many different ways people tell you, that you have to, okay, yeah, you can have your own story, you can have your own whatever, but it has to fit within like the parameters of you've got to have the paragraphs laid out like this, you have to have the scenes this way, there has to be a beat on page 27. If you don't do it this way, nobody's going to listen.
Well, it has to be exciting. And again, write you a exciting movie, one that would excite you to see it. Because if it's going to excite you, it will probably excite an audience. That's the thing. There's a whole universal thing with people, and if it gets you down deep in your gut when you're thinking it, it's going to hit somebody else. Now, if you're kind of bored when you're doing it, and if you're following along a recipe where okay,
Mm.
it's got to have 3 acts and blah 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 blah. You know what? It's going to be like a recipe book. It's going to be like most movies made now.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they all went to school and they all learned how to do it. Fortunately I'd only lasted one class or two classes in writing, and I've never read a book on it or anything like that. But I go to movies and I see what works. It's all you feel it. If it doesn't, if it feels right, then it's going to be right, and then an audience is going to react.
Is that what happened with you wrote Sonny Boy, which I actually only seen for the first time recent enough. Uh a a wild, wild concept. Extremely entertaining where I found that I kind of just I don't know, I feel like what you said nowadays, I try to go to the movies quite often and a lot of times I just feel like maybe it's more to just say, "Oh yeah, I did see that new movie." I'm not actually pulled into a world or a universe and a story.
The problem with movies now, a lot of them, and there's still some good ones made, but that rare and rare and rare, is you've got a committee and they've got to show that they're making money, and so they decide to, well, this subject works. We'll try one of those, and they're just they're just piecing together crap that's already worked. And anybody with a vision, they don't want to. They don't want to. They can't okay that, because if it doesn't work, then they'll be in trouble. So if they say, well, we'll do it like this, nobody can blame them, because they said, well, that worked over there. We just did what this other guy did and it worked, and so don't blame us. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird one. And then it seems like,
It's terrible.
yeah, it seems like as well then if an original idea does work, all the studio execs want to jump on it and go, see, we knew this would work. We knew it'd be $100 million movie. We're so great.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't see any really great $100 million movies these days
No, no.
either.
I
And
would
they're
agree.
fewer and fewer, because I get all the screeners, the Directors Guild screeners, and every year there's one or two that somehow slip through. And there are a couple of directors, young directors, that are doing a good job, but most of it's an assembly line. They're
Yeah,
they're
it
they're
is.
they're cranking out prefabricated housing or prefabricated movies.
How did the story or the idea for Sonny Boy come about?
Oh, that came out. I got that idea. Well, it's from a bunch of different places, but the main idea, I was a house painter in San Francisco. I was up on scaffolding about 3 stories up, and this guy next to me was from Indiana. And he tells me the story about this small town where he came from, and some guy was uh, a big stolen car. He had a whole bunch of stolen cars, a whole
mm-hmm.
farmland, and he had a whole bunch of stuff. So anyway, so at some point he'd gotten this kid, and he kind of tortured him and stuff like that. And everyone in town, the kid grew up, and everyone in town was scared to death of this kid, because he walked around with a big overcoat on, and he carried a sawed-off shotgun underneath, and the kid would kill you for nothing. And everyone in town knew about it. I said, wow, that's a good story.
That is a story.
Yeah, I remembered that one. It was like just a firsthand story of, and then the whole transsexual thing came through, because I was living in a neighborhood where we had a bunch of transsexuals. So some of the people anyway, so I just kind of mixed it all up and put it together.
I did read somewhere, and I don't know, I want you to correct me if this is wrong or you were misquoted or somebody was misquoted at one point, but the Pearl character was supposed to originally wear black rubber breasts with milk in
Oh,
them
he did.
to feed the baby.
Oh, that's in there. If you see the Blu-ray, it's in there. They went back to the original one. Oh yeah, David Carradine had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
he
there's
had. He had.
different cuts of this then, I assume.
Huh?
Is there different cuts of the movie?
Oh yeah, there was a. Well, the movie came out and it got trashed, and the public was outraged, and the poor director wrote me a letter a couple years later saying his life was ruined by it. He had to leave L.A. But yeah, no, they cut it down, but yeah, the Blu-ray I have definitely has the black uh, fake breasts and milk and all that. It's a
Yeah, because
touching. It's a touching scene.
because I did see online, people were talking on Reddit about there was multiple things kind of chopped up and taken out, and there was different edits and there was different cuts of the movie. And I couldn't actually seem to, well, at least online. I actually do have the Blu-ray ordered. But from what I could see online, I couldn't find like an untouched version or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's like a director's cut or a unrated cut or whatever it is.
Well, I can tell you that the whole movie kind of sucks, because they Italian producer bought it, and he wouldn't let me direct it, and he was a real schlock master. So they came up with it. You see, it was supposed to be a Frankenstein remake.
Mm.
And Sonny Boy was supposed to be this horrible looking creature. And they thought, no, we'll make it nice. We'll make him look like a kind of a nice looking surfer boy. So you take Frankenstein and you make him into a surfer boy. You got big problems right there. So that's the first thing. But the the fake tits got in. I don't know how that survived, but yeah, that one did.
It's funny how they make choices like that. Is it difficult when you write a project like that and you want to direct and maybe the powers that be and then we get all these other people involved and somehow, maybe you
It's
get told,
horrible.
well, is that difficult to maybe
It's
then afterwards
horrible.
look at the final product and go, no, 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 that's not what I wanted.
Oh yeah. Well, when they didn't want me, they wouldn't let me come to the filming. They kept me completely away. I think it was Empire Pictures. I forget who it was. Anyway, I still had a friend in the production company or the production company. And when it was all finished, they invited me into a screening, and I took some friends, and I sat in the front row with one of the executives next to me. And after about 4 minutes in, I just kept saying, "I'm going to kill that fucking director. I'm going to kill that." And I didn't know that the producer had made him rewrite it. And then, I belittled his effort. And then he sent me this really sorry letter. I still have it. It's very funny that um, he didn't have a choice and he was forced to rewrite it, and the movie ruined his life. And when it came out, everyone hated it so much he had to leave LA.
Does that happen often on projects where producers or executives, or I don't know, sometimes I've heard them referred to as wannabe creatives, get really involved and like try to change
Oh
like the
yeah, they can
essence?
ruin everything. And it's very rare that a director has final cut. And the best movies they do, because you get people that aren't real sharp, that they look at it and they go, I could do that. And usually the point where they can get involved in is the editing, because all the hard work's done, so they just
Yeah.
rearrange the stuff. But they do it with the scripts too. I mean, it's um,
I've
I had a script where I went into a script meeting, and there was like about 10 people around a table, and I came in as the writer, and these were all executives, and they're all young, and they all had college degrees, they all gotten out of college pretty recently, and they didn't know what to say. And finally one spoke up, and she said, Mr. Whifler, I for one can never okay a script coming out of our company that has somebody picking scabs. And then they all agreed, and then they all went around and said what I couldn't have in the movie. It was a horror movie. Come on, and it was somebody picking scabs, and it's like, oh, you can't have that. But they all had something they needed to be taken out because it bothered them.
I've heard that several times off air where people have told me horror stories about stuff like that, or they come with a script and everything seems to be fine. And then all of a sudden, like this guy behind this desk and that guy that doesn't have anything to do comes along and goes, yeah, you know what? I think if we do this dialogue, and actually, I was thinking if we put a character in that doesn't make any sense and has no place, that'd be like a cool idea because it's doing well over in this market. And, if we put a random thing in here that says this.
In Sonny Boy, the Italian producer was fucking this lady, and he put her in as the love interest, Frankenstein's love interest, because and she's terrible, and there's
It,
no reason for her to be in there. She's riding around a little moped, and it's like, what?
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it
it's
happens.
so odd to me though, why like people who aren't creative or don't want to be creative, and then all of a sudden, like you said, once the hard work is done, now I want to be creative.
Well, yeah, but they want to be creative, and it looks so much fun, you know.
Mm.
But they can't do it when you're shooting, or if they try. I mean, it's happened to me a few times, which I love it because when I'm directing, I know what I want. You know, it's all planned out. I know what I want, and you know, I've been a couple of times where I'm thinking about something, and then one of the crew members has a suggestion, and then somebody else has a suggestion, and two or three people start suggesting how to play the scene or how to get the shot and all that. And I go, okay, well, let's vote on it. And they go, oh, they're all happy. And I said, fuck you. I'd say what's going to happen. You have nothing to say. And then they'll usually be the wimpiest person going, you're just like Hitler. And then I'll go, that's the greatest compliment anybody could ever give a director. Don't you know that?
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. But it's, I don't know for you, like how you feel about the, looking back on that movie in particular now, but it seems to have developed like a pretty decent cult following. Do you think that there's a reason that like it's been kept alive by fans for all these years?
Oh yeah, because it crosses a lot of barriers. I mean, most of them were taken out, but it's still. I mean, David Carradine nursing a baby. I mean, it's so out there, and it was so ahead of its time too. I mean, 30, 40 years ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, there's just stuff in there that it's just it's wrong. Wrong. You shouldn't have that sort of stuff in movies.
You probably wouldn't even get a conversation nowadays with something like that, would you?
Get a conversation?
Yeah, like if you wrote a similar movie right now, do you think that you would have an impossible time trying to get it made with some of
I,
that controversial stuff, and like it's very surreal and wild and out there, and the performances are just freakish at times?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It would definitely have a hard time, and you'd probably have protesters.
It's funny because for one part, I feel like there's a lot of people out there who want more of that stuff, who want stuff that's just batshit crazy, that's just, off the wall, there's no holds barred. But then you always have that other side who are like, no, you can't do that. You can't say that. You can't put that in a movie.
Well, the problem is with those people that say you can't have that, they just whet the taste for the people that want it more. And then there's always a reaction to that kind of stuff. And that kind of censorship really doesn't, they can try as hard as they can, but yeah, it's like, my daughter, she's pretty young. She's in early 20s. And, you're not supposed to say the word retard or retarded ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all her friends say now because they're not supposed to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. That is actually, you're right about that. That's definitely a thing. Do you have any, what I would consider comfort movies, whether it be horror movies or otherwise, in the
Comfort
sense of,
movie.
yeah, well,
Comfort.
in the sense of like maybe movies that you would revisit more often
I'll
than
tell you what
others.
my favorite movie is, and it is a comfort movie. It's called A Place in the Sun.
Okay.
It's an old one. Yeah, Place in the Sun, Montgomery Clift, and Elizabeth Taylor, and Shelley Winter, and Raymond Burr. And I just love it because it's a morality tale, and it's hardcore morality. Shit hits the fan.
And what do you think it is about it that I guess draws you back
Well,
to that?
a couple things. Number one, George Stevens directs it, right? Who was That's probably his greatest movie. He directed. He was a cameraman on a lot of the Laurel and Hardy films,
Hmm.
and it's the way it's photographed is just amazing. He and some of the scenes he would do, 20 or 30 different angles, and he's got two close-ups in that film that are the most magnificent close-ups ever in any movie ever. I mean, this is when you judge movies for close-ups. There's a couple of Elizabeth Taylor that are just amazing, and then the talent of Montgomery Clift with Elizabeth Taylor just it's and Shelley Winter, but it's just the morality. It doesn't let down. It's a really interesting piece.
Um, I'm gonna say something now that won't sound as it won't sound as I guess clever and cinephile like when I bring up something like Doctor Giggles and put that in the same format as like something that I and there's many others consider like a comfort movie, like I don't know, a go to movie. I don't know if it's like the nostalgia of the time or something like that that brings me back to that, but a lot of people don't know the actual, I guess, story behind that is vastly different from what you had actually written and intended that to be, right?
Dr. Giggles?
Yeah.
Well, there is a version. I went and took the script and I remade it.
I know, and I was going to get to that because I
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
got a
yeah,
chance to see that as well.
yeah, that's a good one. My friend Nick Searcy stars in it. He did a smashing job. Um, what was the question?
J-
Uh,
yeah, just on the like for a lot of people out there who whether you like that movie Dr. Giggles or not won't know that that wasn't your original
Oh,
intention.
they paid me. I bought a house with the money they paid me, and they just kept the character names pretty much. I'll tell you the story on the original Doctor Giggles and where that one came from. It's two different stories. I'm a big I listen to the radio all the time for news stories. And I love this oddball news. People messing up. So there were these were two stories I heard. Actually, one was from a TV documentary, and the setup was this guy was an ambulance driver or worked as an EMT, and he worked with a bunch of people, and he'd always offer to buy donuts for everybody, and they all go out there. He'd buy them donuts, and they go out there on the day's work, and the people started complaining because they were getting diarrhea all the time. And they didn't know that this guy had been dosing their donuts. But he went ahead and he went from an EMT and went to medical school, right? And he was going farther and giving them diarrhea. He was killing patients. And so they went to, after they put him in jail, they went to his house with a camera and they opened up cupboards in the kitchen. And it's filthy kitchen, but in the cupboards, it was nothing but different kinds of poisons. Right? And they asked him in the jail cell, they said, "We went to your house and there are all these poisons in the kitchen." And he said, "Well, every doctor has to know about poisons." So that was that guy, and I took him, and then there was another one I heard on the news about this guy. He had a problem um, with his male body parts. They were they were bothering him. They were taking too much of his attention, and so he eventually what he did is he took his dining room table and put a sheet over it and then put a light up there and a mirror, and he had done a bunch of research and he figured out it was some gland in his abdomen that was the problem. the real cause of the problem. It wasn't his genitals, but the real cause was his gland. So he opened himself up, dug in there to get that gland, and it was so painful he couldn't continue, and he had to call an ambulance. And they brought him to the hospital, and the people at the hospital said he had done a pretty good professional job opening himself up. And the kicker was they weren't surprised to see him because he'd been in 3 months earlier after he cut off his dick.
Like,
so anyway, I took those two people and put them together into one delightful package, and then put him as a neighbor next door to a nice young yuppie couple that were kind of scary, and they had their own problems with fear.
so when you came up with that original concept for what a lot of people thought ended up being Dr. Giggles, which we'll get to in a second, because you actually managed to make the movie that you more intended to make. But so they just pay you like a boatload of money and then just completely change the whole idea. What's the point for them of doing that? Like, of taking your story and then just completely just not doing it?
Because that was the one where the first I think I forget who it was. I'm not going to mention names, but the first one was one where they told me that the committee told me they can't have scab picking. They ended up passing it. I went to somebody out through Warner Brothers, very famous producer there, who used to buy Frank Lloyd Wright houses, and he was going to do it. And they got a lead producer, and he told me my agent had me rewriting scripts, and this guy told me, he said, I want something that's just really cheesy and will play to a grindhouse. And I don't want this, and I don't want this, and I don't want this. And and Dead Ringers had just come out. And I said, I want these kind of tools like in Dead Ringers. Oh. So anyway, I did 2 rewrites for them, and they hated the rewrites, and so they got another guy, and they just manicoto, and they just changed it completely. And then he stole stuff from Hitchcock, the 39, the mirror scene from 39 Steps, and or was it 39 Steps, 39 Steps. Anyway, and so I went and saw it. There's another film they wouldn't let me watch the production on, right? They keep me away. Oh, don't let this. And so I went, and they didn't even invite me to a screening. I got a VHS tape anonymously in the mail a year later. That's really nice. But so I went to see it in the theater, matinee at the local Glendale theater. And I just sat there, and the audience, the few people that were in there, were just bored to tears. You just feel it. Because it was they just recycled all this old horror stuff, and they tried to recycle it to make it a little nicer. And it was like this. There was nothing there.
How does that feel for you at that point? Like, obviously, having gone through what you did with the likes of Sonny Boy, did you have a little bit thicker skin when it came to, I wish I could tell people they just tore my whole idea apart?
Well, I dealt with it. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't drive around shooting people. No, it's part of the it comes with the territory. It can be a brutal business, and I wasn't in the position where I could get that final cut.
Is that the worst part for a writer, especially when it comes to this kind of medium of storytelling, that your vision?
But I wasn't really a writer. I was a director who wrote.
Okay, yeah.
See, I knew how to do the second part even better than the writing.
Mm.
Yeah. because a lot of writers don't know how to do that. I mean, like because casting and working with actors and production design and all that stuff that most writers don't know about that, and you don't want them near it. But I knew all
Do you think, not to say that it's like a conspiracy or anything like that, but do you think in certain productions, if maybe the studio or executives have an ulterior motive that they don't want somebody like you, then in the sense of like, okay, this guy knows how to direct, he knows how to deal with the cast, he knows how to structure a story. He's just going to keep trying to push back against our.
well, oh yeah, well, and this is a more modern for big studios. Yeah, they don't want. They look for new directors, people that they can tell what to do.
Yeah.
They don't want. They don't want anyone with a firm vision because they've got their ideas and yeah. So they yeah. So there it's most of it. That's why most of it is a schlock, and it's kind of boring. And every once in a while, well, every year, there's a few good ones that sneak through, and there's a few directors that are able to penetrate that, but never with the giant budgets.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I know some other like relatively new directors who got the opportunity to get involved with some of the bigger horror IPs and then just got pushed into a corner, told the movie they were making. Movie comes out, movie flops, everyone blames him. And then it's like I'm stuck between obviously the audience thinking I'm absolutely garbage. And then the fact that the executives are like, you'll do what you're told or you'll never make another fucking movie.
That's so true. This is the big trap for directors. Say you're a young director and you make a couple just brilliant movies, and everyone, all their eyes go on you, man. That guy's hot. Let's get him. Then they'll come to you and they'll say, "We'll give you a pile of money to direct our movie." And you go, "Wow, yeah." And then they'll tell you what to do. And then their movie that they've had you do isn't very good. And you may never get to make another good one.
Mm.
Yeah.
That yeah, I do see that happening a lot, and it's unfortunate because I think from a younger me, I never considered that perspective. It always just the media or whoever would just tell you, or some critic, some guy who never made a movie in his life, would be the one to tell you, well, obviously this director is garbage. He has no vision. He hasn't got a clue, and you just kind of hear that and go, oh yeah, of course he's just a terrible filmmaker, and that's the end of it.
You always look for their first few movies. That'll tell you everything.
Yeah.
And there's so many that their first few movies are just absolutely brilliant. And then you never hear of them again, or then it's coming out with a studio, and it's like, what? That just looks like everything else that comes out of the studio. What happened to that guy?
Would that have been difficult for you at the time if, let's say, the Dr. Giggles thing and they sit down and go, okay, you know, we want you to direct this, but this is the movie. It's not your movie anymore. It's this thing that we've come up with.
Oh, I don't. I probably couldn't have done it. I probably would have because I'm such a whore. But if the if the pay was really good,
Yeah,
people are corruptible. But yeah, I probably wouldn't have known what to do, and I wouldn't have had any passion for it.
yeah. I think that ultimately as well shines through. I think you've alluded to it a few times that people can see through that for the most part. That like if there's passion behind something, or
Yeah,
if people just don't give a shit and they're just making it just to try and make money.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Because it is a great art form.
yeah.
It's just really hard to
What
make
was
it
that process?
work.
You mentioned earlier, and some people may not notice, and this was something I really wanted to highlight because I think a lot of people probably won't notice, but the process that you had to go through to wait well over a decade to finally make the movie that I think I've heard you say best resembles your original vision. for like the Doctor or Mr. Giggles or whatever you want to call it character. With your movie, I think it's had, I don't know if it's a regional thing with the names. There's Deadly Turn, and then I've seen it called Neighborhood Watch.
Yeah, well, it started out as Neighborhood Watch. Then we couldn't find a distributor, and we got a distributor because the other distributors wanted to cut all up. We found a distributor who would distribute it, but they just said they had to do a name change because they wanted the first letter of the title to be higher up in the alphabet, so it'd be more likely for people to see it. And it was just like, oh God. And so it was just like this generic thing.
What was that process like to have to wait all that time and then finally get to make the movie that you felt like, is as close to maybe that original idea?
Well, I was doing other things. I was
Yeah, of course,
doing
but that was
TV.
always obviously.
I kept busy. I mean, it wasn't like they put me on some kind of drugs and I was like for 10 years.
I just mean in the sense of like, obviously this idea was enough. It was simmering in the background enough for you to want to revisit it a decade later.
Well, it was similar. Well, the script, both those scripts are just killers to read. The Dr. Giggles one, I mean, I'd make people would get sick when they just read it. I had sent it out to a lot of studio people, and one guy said I had to open up all the windows in my house. I couldn't breathe. Okay, sorry. And the movies, the new movie, it's really funny when I went on festival stuff. We would first time I showed it was in New York at the that theater down in oh, I don't know. I think it's what's it, De Niro's theater. Anyway, so it was on Halloween, and I went down to speak. If the movie was over, but I couldn't get down the aisle because somebody had passed out. And it turned out every time I'd show this sucker, somebody would pass out or have a seizure.
You know what, right? So I've seen a a lot of movies. I've seen a lot of fucked up and weird shit. I've read a lot of weird shit. I've looked at a lot of real life uncomfortable, horrible things. And um number one, actually, which I think is a travesty, I actually found it quite difficult to find this movie, which I think is a little bit of a travesty. But when I did watch it, I found myself genuinely, and this is no word of a lie, and people who know me or have listened to the show or things like that for a bit of time will know. I normally don't have an issue with anything, but there was a few times during this that I really struggled to like not look away and be like, this is really just how it's shot, how it's lit, the whole thing. I was like, this is making me really, really uncomfortable.
No, it's the story that's being told, and it's how it's being told, and it's designed to creep up on you, and it gets in here. It was so funny because I was watch people in here because I know exactly where it's going to hit
Mm.
them and what it's going to do, and yeah, it's but when you see them flopping around on the floor, it's kind of funny. I had one guy he was a bit borderline retarded, and he came. I was in the lobby just passing some time, and he came out at that point. You, I don't think I can watch anymore. I said, "You go back in. It's gonna be nicer."
What a lie that was. Where did you get that I don't know, that kind of mind for stuff like that, that like freakish
You know what? You'd have to ask my mom, and she's dead. I don't know. Uh, I was always a peculiar child. They told me so. I definitely liked the odd things, and I'd always have a haunted house going in the crawl space of our home, and I have like my shrunken heads down there, and
do you seek out that kind of that kind of content? Like, do you watch movies that are
No, I don't generally
that?
watch. Well, most horror movies really bore me. The best horror movie I've seen recently, it wasn't too recent. Well, I kind of liked Beau Was Afraid. I
Yeah.
don't think that's really a horror movie, but I also like The Witch a lot.
Mm.
But most horror is because I know where it's coming from, and a bunch of blood slaughter is not really that interesting.
Yeah, this movie is one I think again. I don't know what the reception has been like, in the States and things like that, but I know upon researching over here, I think it's only starting to like refind its audience again, which I find happens a lot with horror movies or anything horror adjacent even. A lot of times they kind of come out, people see them, and then over time the community gets on it and like it starts to build and build and build, and they gain these huge followings and they get re-releases on Blu-rays, and you'll probably be asked to do a director's commentary and there'll be a box set and a this and a that. Um is that something that you would entertain? Because I personally think that this movie, like I said, it takes a lot for me to kind of cringe at the screen, but I genuinely like I only watched it yesterday and I was like, wow, this is making me extremely uncomfortable. And there's only a handful of characters, but it's so
And there's no blood.
yeah.
No blood. But you see, what the movie does is that you're afraid of what you may see because it's setting something up there, and and across there's a bunch of things you're not supposed to see on TV or on movies. But anyway, I gotta say, you're talking about comfort movies, and I just gotta say, one of my favorite, besides Place in the Sun, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm a big fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and there's very little blood in that.
Yeah, being a big fan then of the original Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, no, the rest, all the remakes are terrible.
I was literally going to ask, have you had a chance to see any of those? And I suppose, what's your opinion on? I feel like that happens a lot now with studios. They get their hands on an IP and it's like, let's just fucking rinse this thing till there's nothing left.
Yeah, yeah. Number two was kind of. I liked the part where he's picking at the thing on his head, but other than that, it was like there was nothing there. No, the first one's brilliant. What how you gonna top that?
In your opinion, as a filmmaker, do you think that things like that, like franchises, let's say, shouldn't exist then in that sense? Because I feel like the more we get, for the most part, in a franchise, the bigger the number added on to, like, part two, part three, part four, part five, they progressively get worse and worse.
People will go see them. I don't know. You can't outlaw them, but people will go see them, and they do them because that's again they're fairly sure they'll make money, and they can't. Executives can't be fired for okaying a franchise because it made money before. So
Yeah.
that's their safe way out. But it's I don't know.
Is that something that would have ever interested you or would interest you? If you had a conversation, someone said, look, we have our hands on X, Y, and Z IP. Is there any chance maybe we could see what you think?
If I was offered to do a remake of something, it'd be completely different. Because I would sit down and examine it. I'd let it touch me, and then I'd write that movie that's in my head that I want to see because it's all the stuff I want to see.
Speaking of that, it's something else that I think is kind of lost on people from an audience perspective when you're a filmmaker. Uh, when you get into a room, you mentioned getting into a room with executives and stuff. The skill of having to try and pitch or sell your idea, is that something that can only be done by experiencing it?
I don't know. I never really did that. I was not very successful. I didn't know you were even supposed to do that at first. I thought you just went away and wrote a script, and made a movie. I was so naive. But the whole idea of pitching too, I don't know. I don't like committees.
Mhm.
Do not like committee work. And, I guess you'd say I do not play well with others,
I feel especially
i.e.
in those
Hitler.
things.
Directs like Hitler.
I feel like especially in those situations though, it's a very strange. Like I said, I got close with some Irish filmmakers who have started to make more American style movies and things like that with some of the bigger companies. And they mentioned the things like the water bottle tour where someone hears you had one good idea, you're invited to all these meetings and studios, and you get the free water, and it's like everybody tells you all this shit, and then you realize when you get home that nobody's calling back, nobody's emailing back, nobody cares, nobody's interested.
Yeah. Well, I was in one meeting with one woman in a studio, and it was really funny because I didn't really know I was supposed to have something to pitch her, and I didn't know why she was meeting with me. I really didn't know anybody, agents and all that. So I went in there, and she did. She got kind of nervous because she didn't know what to talk about. So she finally says, "Well, Graeme, what kind of movies do you like?" And I looked at her with dead eyes, and I said, I like movies where people get hurt. And I could just see her reaching under the desk to press a little button to get security in. But, I do like movies where people get hurt. Those are the only ones I like. And that happens to be comedy. That's tragedy. That's the whole basis of drama.
Would you have liked to have made more projects? Is it something that you'd
Oh
still be
yeah.
open to
Oh
right
yeah.
now?
Oh yeah. But I've got a nice body of work, and I did some interesting TV stuff. I did convince a good part of the nation here that the world was going to end. That was fun. And yeah.
Is it something that's still because you feel like quite a passionate person and somebody who's genuinely interested in what they're talking about versus sometimes I feel like people just talk at you or just say whatever they think people want to hear. Do you still have that desire, like as regards some like I don't know where right now you're at with like your writing or directing or things like that,
I
or
don't
like
know
do you
if
have
I'll ever
projects?
do another movie. I don't know. I'm old, and it's like a really hard thing to do. But every day I have to be creative, constantly have to be creative. And it's one of the only things that really gives me joy. And I've been doing it all my life since I was a little tiny kid. And I can't explain it. And I don't know, you know.
And when you say being creative, is that sitting down and coming up with a story or fleshing out a concept?
Any number of ways, any number of ways, any number of ways.
Would you
I,
have I was just gonna ask, would you have a desire to I don't know, release it? Because I'm sure you probably have many works, many stories, many ideas that never saw the light of day. Have you ever, I don't know,
Actually, I don't have a lot of scripts. Everything I've written has gotten made. I don't like
okay.
to have piles of unmade scripts.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
even I
I've been
don't even
very
mean
lucky. I mean, I don't, I'm not writing them to put in a drawer. So, yeah, they all got made.
I mean
Even the
even
bad ones.
I don't know, like, if maybe you have ideas or just concepts
Yeah.
for stories or something like that. I seen a little bit of a turn during the pandemic where some filmmakers were like, "You know what? I'm gonna, like, make a little book. I'm gonna put some of my short stories in it," or stuff that just seems to just keep getting pushed back at me like, "Oh, it's too over the top. It's too crazy. It's too wild. We can't do that."
Um, hmm.
Is that something you would ever entertain?
Yeah, I'll entertain anything, but I gotta see that there is a little bit of ray of light to get it out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because it's. I like to build things and get them done.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That makes sense.
um,
Um, what piece of advice would you give to either an aspiring writer or a filmmaker? I guess now is it literally just a case of having to try and do and create and make? Because I feel like a lot of people, I mentioned it probably even myself before about screenwriting handbooks and workbooks and all this shit, and we listen to 200 podcasts about how to do it, but we never actually try and shoot anything with a camera. We never actually put pen to paper, or we never type anything on the computer.
well, I don't know. I've never read any of those books, and you know, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend doing. I mean, that's the only way you get anything done is to do it. And you know, um, if you're going for visuals, I mean, I started out in photography, and I still do photography because it's the image, and even though if it's not a moving image, it's still the image, and that's a way to connect with people. And you can tell whether you're connecting with just an image. And as far as writing, it just write. Don't read any books and don't listen to anybody and definitely don't go to school and have experts tell you because anybody that's teaching writing, they're teaching it because they can't do it.
It's funny. So many people have told me that don't listen to anybody when you want to write or you want to
Yeah.
do something. Just write. Don't listen to anybody's do
Listen
this,
to
do that.
yourself.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself. That's why when I said write for yourself, and if it's boring to you, then change it. Make it the you know. Again, I always revert back to about 3 years old, or about 3 years old. That's when I kind of reach my maturity. And you, when you do something creative and you go, "Ooh, I want to get in trouble for that," that's you hit gold.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So, looking forward into the future then, is there anything, I don't know, that you have left on your bucket list or in your mind that you're like, I'd love to get that project done, or whether it be a
I
film and
got a
TV
couple
show,
of
anything?
things, but I'm not at liberty to talk about.
Yeah, of course, of course. Is there anywhere where people can maybe keep up to date, or I don't know, in case something does come about, or will we just hear about it
Oh,
on the
you'll hear
usual
about it here.
platforms? Um, because I've seen you pop up from time to time, with Bloody Disgusting and different places like
Yeah,
that, and Dread Central and things like that. So is that probably where people could expect to see if there's something
yeah,
somewhere like that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Final question then would be, and I don't want to say I normally ask why horror, but I feel like it's so much more vast than that for you. But why filmmaking? Why that medium, and what does it mean to you?
See, it, the well, I started watching TV was a little kid, and then when I saw my first color movie, I'd never seen color before. I love movies, but the thing is, movies and all that, um, the ultimate form of those are dreams. That's that's it's all dreams, and if you can make a movie as engrossing as a dream, I mean, I love dreams. It's
Yeah.
just it's the subconscious in movies is so important. It's really, and that's one of the reasons that uh, Deadly End or Neighborhood Watch is so troubling is working on like a dream type of thing because there's imagery there that's anyway. It's all about dreams and the best movies. You feel like you're watching a dream or you're having a dream.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I will say, as we're closing this chat out, that Deadly End or Neighborhood Watch, definitely felt like that for me. It was like it's kind of surreal, sort of like fever dream. I was like, I don't know, like I feel like when I was thinking about it a couple of days later, I was like, is that some weird repressed memory, or was that just a movie I watched? I don't know if like some of the imagery, I was like, wait, did I dream that or did I see that?
Well, a lot of my imagery and the stuff I write and do, it's all repressed memories. A lot of it is, or
Mm,
stuff I've just seen.
I love that. Graham, it's been a pleasure to chat.
Thank you.
It's been an honor. I
Good.
would love to. Hopefully, if there's any announcements in the future, we'll be able to link up again
Cool.
and chat.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It's a
It's been
pleasure.
a
I
real
wish you all the
pleasure.
best.
And you obviously love film.
Oh, I do. I surely do. And like I said, I appreciated that film when I. It's funny because I had seen Doctor Giggles so young, and I always had this weird like memory about the cover, the artwork with the eyes, and I was like, and over the years, and then I found out that that wasn't the original kind of idea and concept, and then I became enamored with like, wait, what's this other movie? And then to see it, and it's like, now I get it. Kind of, I can see now why. Yeah,
Well,
but it was
nobody
fantastic.
in the audience passed out or went into a seizure watching Doctor Giggles. I guarantee you, it's
No,
a safe movie. You can take your family. No one's gonna have a bad reaction. No psychotic breakdown. I saw somebody have a psychotic breakdown watching.
you know what? It wouldn't actually surprise me. So for everybody listening, if you can do one thing for me, if you can find a copy of Neighborhood Watch or Deadly End, pick it up, watch it, and then message me on social media or in the comments below wherever you're listening to this and let me know what you think of it because I'd be fascinated. Like I said, I watch a lot of movies from all genres, but a lot of horror, a lot of weird horror, a lot of I don't know, uncomfortable, unsettling content around horror. And this one genuinely made me cringe at several parts, even with just the dialogue. There was nothing even really happening. I was like, I don't know why he makes me so uncomfortable, but I can't. The scene where he comes to the door with he says it's grapes or preserves or whatever,
Yeah.
and that's where we kind of see the switch in the character, and like the dude tells him to get the fuck out. And I can't remember the specifics of the dialogue there, but it was fantastic where he said something about like, oh, when you're doing something with that sperm, something, whatever. And I was like, whoa, this is like, it's like a switch just turned in his head. That was fantastic.
Well, I have nothing to do with that. I don't think like that. My brain doesn't work like that. That's something I just made up.
We'll leave it there before I get you in trouble. Graeme, it's been fantastic. I hope we can
Thanks.
stay in touch and I would love to do this again.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.